union. It's a big bloated public sector which urgently needs trimming, Eamon.
Well, it seems to me as though there are a number of people who simply don't operate in the real world and understand the vital lifeline that our public services provide. The notion that you can cut away support to the newly born children who rely on care workers going out to look after themselves and their mums in the community, looking after vulnerable children who perhaps live in violent homes. We had the horrific Baby P case, and one of the findings was that actually the backup care was not sufficient enough. Are we to reduce the number of care workers? Are we to leave the disabled and our mentally ill without a vital lifeline? And our elderly? All the emphasis in recent years is that we should actually provide more for people in their homes, affording them dignity, and that requires carers, people who work in our public services to go and deliver those services.
And Derek,
nobody could argue with that.
Okay,
but let me say, where should the money come from? The money should come from businesses starting up, opening up shops, and businesses on the high street, paying their business rates into the local council.
Derek, would you think that they would step into the gap?
I think we're all missing the trick here. I mean, unfortunately, we're talking about what's happening now instead of what's happening in the future. And I think we're actually missing the main issue. And the main issue in all this is the issue of the fact that less and less and less children are being born and more people are getting older and relying on the state in variety of different ways. And that's something we keep missing. And in a funny sort of way, I don't think that the government have gone far enough in this. We've got a fact that in 1980, 1 in every 1,000 people were going to live to 100. Now, 1 in every 100 are going to live to be 100. In the next 5 years, there's going to be over 1 million people over 100 years old. 5 hours per day, more and more people are living.
Douglas, do you not have a moral obligation to look after those people with the kind of workers who might lose their jobs?
Look, I mean, both the callers, if I can say so, have made fallacious arguments on this. The first one's, and rather kind of scaremongering ones. The first person said this is attacking women. The second has brought in the Baby P case. Look, the problem in the Baby P case was not that there was not enough public sector involvement in it. It was that in our society we have families that have fallen apart, communities that don't support each other. This is not simply, you know, if a child is abused by someone, it isn't just the state's responsibility.
Simon Hill,
I can give one other example of that.
I mean, just on Baby P case, we were talking about this before. The reality as well as there is nobody criticised the parents of Baby P who sent the kid over here, didn't even know the parents they were going into.
And
someone along the line, I had those summer
but we're talking,
there. You actually talk about social workers. That kid should never have been sent over in the way it was.
But
Irresponsible parents.
To be fair, that is a debate for another day. Simon Hill is from Ecclesia. Simon, you're a Christian. You took part in the anti-cuts demo on Saturday. Do you think there is a moral case here?
I think this is a very important moral issue. It seems quite clear now from the reports produced by the Institute of Fiscal Studies and others that the people who will be hit the hardest by these cuts will be the poorest and the most vulnerable, people who are ill or disabled, or more people who will be made unemployed, while the very wealthy will, get away with it again, basically. We're not all in this together. The wealthy will preserve their privileges, they will continue to have access to private health care, private education, while we see social housing virtually abolished.
Okay, Reverend George Hardgrove, Simon, thanks very much indeed, and sorry to cut in, but Reverend George Hardgrove, I want to ask you a very specific question, as a religious person. Is this going to make us a more spiritual country? Is this going to enrich us morally, spiritually? Are we going to end up a better place as a result of these cuts?
Within Christianity, there is a principle of wise stewardship, which is what we need in this country. I'm certain that there will be people who will be re-examining their priorities in life, and in that re-examination will actually look to their faith and look to faith as, rather than dependency on the state, might look towards dependency on God. So I can see that happening.
Okay.
But I want to respond to the man from Ecclesia. We have to have wise stewardship. And that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about cuts for cuts' sake. We're talking about wise stewardship.
I know you want to come back, but Derek, I just want to ask you, we've become, at one end, people would argue welfare junkies, and at the other, debt junkies. Is there a benefit in becoming less consumerist and less dependent on other people's money?
I mean, I certainly think, I understand the whole welfare junkie argument, of course I do. I also argue the fact that, I also understand as well the fact that, you know, the top 1 or 2% are still responsible for not paying billions and billions in tax because they've got great accountants. You know, I also look at that side, which hasn't been recognised. I mean, there are a number of things that aren't recognised. You've got to remember, when in the mid-90s, when we had this whole sort of problem, we had the global economy was good. The global economy is not good now. It's a very different situation. People's confidence needs to be built up. And I'm afraid what you saw the other day will do nothing but batter people's confidence.
Douglas?
I don't think that's true. The situation is as follows. We have become welfare junkies. We've become, as a society, terribly reliant on the state. I'm afraid you've seen it in a lot of the arguments we've had this morning. If something goes wrong, the state must be able to answer it. As a great example of this recently, I was speaking to somebody, an elected representative, who described an elderly man coming to his surgery who came across the city, was ill, you know, took a great effort to get there, and got to the surgery to say that his door handle needed replacing. Now, by the hundreds of pounds that were needed at that point for the council to send somebody out to survey the situation, for somebody else to come in and do it, does the man not have a neighbour? Does he not have friends? Does he not have family? This is a bigger question,
okay,
is what we are becoming as a society.
Adrian has emailed us, the cuts to the public sector are absolutely necessary and long overdue. It is riddled with waste, inefficiency and non-jobs. Martin says, I'm so fed up with commentators saying we all borrowed too much. The reality is banks threw credit at people, made profit on high interest rates. The government failed to regulate. Commentators should stop blaming ordinary people. And Sam says cuts is not a bad word when there's been so much wasteful spending. George, will the church step in or the big society step
Absolutely.
in? Will that be good for people?
It will be good. You know, the church was there before the welfare state, and the church will be there after the welfare state. We are gearing up to help people.
Derek,
that's what we are there. We're there to serve, and we will serve.
I know we're getting into the debate. The third debate is going to go on the church, but the irony, the church was there beforehand, the church was there afterwards. The church, to many degrees, was there beforehand, causing it. We'll be there afterwards, causing it as well. We'll have that debate in the third issue.
Indeed, we will. Okay.
What I don't understand is why we're not sort of concentrating more on the whole pensions issue. And you know, we were discussing this before. The future is so important for our kids and our grandkids, and where they're going to be. And there's a position at the moment where we're refusing to accept the fact that people are getting fitter, are living longer and not getting fitter.
We're going to talk, Derek, I'm going to interrupt you there because we are going to talk about retirement age in a few minutes on this very program.